All right, we'll see how this works. Headed out, making the last run of tongue and groove. I got two fascia boards, well, four fascia boards, and then the barge. It's all that trim stuff that comes down at the end of the roof. Headed out in the boat to do that. Got the front window open to accommodate these 16 footers. So it's going to be a little loud, a little windy, maybe a little bit of rain coming in, which is unfortunate because I got about a week left to get this done before I go to Wisconsin for an outdoor writers conference. So feeling pressure. I started kind of clearing the lot in April, but really didn't kind of start getting after it till school was out in early June. So this has pretty much been late June to now building. And there are times it's been fun and times it's been satisfying, and other times I just like resent this whole thing and wondering why I'm doing it. It's a kit, which means you get plans and you get all the wood you need, but there's not step-by-step instructions. It doesn't say do this, now do this, now do this, and you're going to have to cut things on site that they don't tell you what you need to cut, which makes sense. And there's a disclaimer that says this should be assembled by a professional, people with construction experience, all that sort of stuff. So me not having that, I don't have that intuition to say, oh, this needs to be cut at this, or I need to measure this with this in mind, or cut this with this in mind. It's been wild. Some of the worst things have happened when, like, the columns that you get, they're about 2 feet longer than they have to be. So got the columns up, you put the timbers down, so that's the walls, you put those down through a notch in the column, and then once you are done with the timbers, you cut the column at an 18.2-degree angle, which seems easy enough, but you get up on a ladder and you're using Sawzall, which I have used a Sawzall before, but not for any sort of precise sort of cut. So I'm trying to match the beveling on the gable ends and try to make this cut. And so it's kind of lumpy, kind of wavy. It's not really the thing that you can kind of clean it up a little bit, but because it was not completely flush with the gable end, the pre-cut timbers that make up the walls, because it's not completely flush with that, the roof is going on in those areas with a little bit of a bump, which is super irritating. Everything else looks pretty flat, pretty good, outside of a couple screws and nails and things coming through the side. It looks pretty good, but man, those bumps kind of bother me. There was another bracket that it makes total sense, but the brackets are super, super sturdy. And the screws that go in, the heads are supposed to stick out just a little bit so that there's some airflow and you don't have the end of one of these roof beam brackets, one of the ends of these roof beams in this bracket where moisture can collect. So there's supposed to be a little bit of air potential circulation in there, just enough to keep things dry. So I was putting the bracket up, and I don't think I accommodated for the thickness of the bracket, which is about an 8. So that 8 in addition to the top of the beam, and just those littles, it doesn't really matter what exactly it is. So if you can't picture this in your brain, that's fine. Just know that those little fractions of an inch, eighth of an inch, half of an inch, quarter of an inch, all that sort of stuff, man, it just becomes infuriating. And those are the moments that have been the most stressful, where small errors culminate in something that's a little bit bigger. And it's a constant battle with my tolerance for, I don't want to say, well, yeah, inaccuracies. It's not going to be perfect. I know it's not going to be perfect. It's a cabin that you can't drive to. It's fine, but also you don't want to be so sloppy and just not caring at all that it ends up being trashy. So that's kind of been the battle, where certain things I fixed, other things it's like, oh, well, it's done. At this point, I can't go back, or to go back and try to fix this. It's going to be structurally sound, there are ways that I can keep it from like water leaking and things like that. So it's like, do I spend all that time to go back there and try to correct this just because there's going to be a little bump? Or can I take measures to make sure that the bump isn't separating the tongue and groove in the roof enough to get water through? But on top of the tongue and groove is plywood and then an underlayment and then the metal roofing. So it's going to be a purely aesthetics thing. So I kind of measure it with that. So is it structurally sound? Yes. All right, we're good. How bad is it going to look? Is it going to look horrible and noticeable? Even if you don't look for it, then maybe look at it at addressing that. But a lot of these things that people have said this, that you don't go into someone's house and scrutinize whether or not something is cracking or a cabin and say, oh, well, oh, looks like you're a little out of level there. Oh, probably didn't plumb that. I've never done that. So kind of stressful, fun, satisfying. Now that I got limited time, I really got to get going. So I got about 10 pieces of tongue and groove decking for the top, for the roof. Then I'll put up the fascia and then plywood on top of that, then the underlayment, and then the metal. So that is what I'm going to try to get done in this week. I got a couple people who are going to come out and help, which is great. So that's what's on the docket. I guess, yeah, 'cause people have been asking me about the kits. I think the kits are great. I don't know. I think it would have been a little bit more intimidating had I known all the details behind it. I just assumed kit, and I was a little bit naive about how much construction I would have to do. I thought there'd be like a bit of it, but I figured that the plans would have all the exact measurements that I would need. But there's no plans for the interior walls. It just says the interior wall goes here. But as far as what the height of the interior wall should be, I called the engineer. The guy said, yeah, you're going to get that measurement once you're done with the outside framing. Then you measure, then you get that. And I thought, oh man, then you have to measure in and then get the beam pocket. So the beam, you cut a notch in the outer wall, and then you build a beam pocket in the interior wall. And that's where one of the beams then meets the other beam that continues through to the front of the cabin where you make another notch. So all that stuff has to match up. And there's not exact measurements for that, which is a pretty, it's not a huge deal. You build the wall, you just make the measurements, you do the math, but I guess I don't trust my math, or maybe that was the problem there. So that was some stress, but got it up, stinking level, square, awesome. That stuff I'm happy about. Look at the side of it. It looks great. The brackets they sent look great. The timbers are awesome. To be able to stack those was fun. Posted some videos of that. Super fun to hammer in those timbers. That is all super fun and satisfying. But there are just some other things that been stressful. However, I do think that, as with anything, if you weigh out every potential bad thing, you end up not doing it. So I'm so glad that I didn't know all the extra stuff that I would have to do, because I would probably be more tempted to say, I don't know, this is a little bit maybe beyond me. Let's just let's just clear this out and make it nice for a tent, as a way of not putting myself in the position to feel so stressed out as an English teacher who writes and does a podcast, building a cabin. Even if it is a kit, like there's still stuff that needs to be done. Like, as I said, it's not like Lincoln Logs. It's kind of like Lincoln Logs, especially to someone who is a builder and you have the plans and you have the wood. But for someone who hasn't done it, I think had I known, I would have been more intimidated and maybe less excited about it. So I'm really glad that we're going through with it, and it's forcing me to do this, because I don't know if I would have otherwise made the choice. And long term, it's going to be way better to come out to the cabin. We're going to be more likely to use it if we can arrive, stoke the fire, or start the fire, obviously, and then have the family out there rather than tent camping. When you're tent camping, especially during hunting season, it's hard to get motivated. If it's going to be nice Friday night, but Saturday is going to rain, and you're going to wake up and the tent's going to be wet, everything's going to be wet, it's kind of tough to get motivated to go. The hot tent really helps with that. But even then, there's just a level of comfort that you can't have, and then it makes it tough to bring our toddler out there. So Haley's not going to want to wake up in that sort of cold, but I think she's going to love the cabin, going to love running around there. It's going to be an awesome place for her to grow up, and get all those experiences with confidence and challenging herself and running around in the woods. And we want to be really purposeful with, I know the word purposeful is kind of overused, and also like the where your food comes from has become cliche. All those terms are kind of cliche, but there's so much value in running around in the woods growing up, and whether or not it dawns on you or not that you're part of an ecosystem, uh, and this is what a deer eats, and then we are looking for the deer, or just flipping over rocks and finding crabs. Just all those little things make a pretty good childhood. Uh, Climbing around, getting dirty, swimming in the ocean. So this cabin's going to be a lot of fun for that. I'm really happy that Abby and I have been able to get the land and then build the cabin. So having jobs that can afford that, and we're far from wealthy. We're definitely not wealthy. It takes some sacrifice change. We eat out sometimes, but not a lot. But Abby's been really, really good with her money. I wasn't great with my money in my 20s, but I've been much more diligent with it in prioritizing things, and just being smarter with it. And then getting my master's degree to help with like the more qualifications you have, the more you qualify to make more money. So that's been huge. Anytime that you can become more certified or collect certifications so that you can increase your salary, that has been incredibly worth the investment. So that's all been great to get to this point. And I'm really excited, really happy that you kind of make the decision in the short term to play the long game, and that's all helped out. So it's been great. Pretty happy. Pretty, yeah. I kind of look around right here. I'm just thinking driving this boat to go out to deliver wood to the cabin. Yeah, it's pretty incredible just to think about how many different decisions you can make that take you down different paths, either with different people or different jobs, careers, good choices, bad choices, laziness, not laziness, whatever. Man, it's pretty happy. Pretty, I don't want to say, I don't know, it's like everything that's encapsulated by the hashtag blessed. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Uh, Heading up this here inlet. It's been logged since like the early 1900s. There were some small individual mills that were going around, some individual people that were logging pretty close to shore and had their own rafts. And then Steam Donkey would yard the timber out and they'd sell it. More industrial scale logging happened on federal land and native corporation land, 70s and 80s. I don't really know exactly when this was logged, or like the plot of land that we have was logged. It's just hard to tell. Some of the hemlock and these cedar trees are rot resistant, so something can be completely covered in moss and it's not rotted away because it takes hundreds of years for some of these things to completely rot away, depending on habitat. So I would guess that most of this stuff was probably logged in the 80s when things were really, really cooking, just based on the second growth and based on the alder trees that are growing in the logging roads. There's an oyster farm that is in the vicinity. There's a couple inlets that they've had fox farms and oyster farms and stuff. So 100 years ago, this place was busy. Like, it's always been people that have come in this area. If you look at all these, so many channels in and around Juneau, Ketchikan, Sitka, there's been so much activity, not huge scale with massive populations, but people have been around. There's a couple coves near South Fork in North Park too, of Ketchikan that bootleggers ran stills, And so you had that alcohol that was coming into Ketchikan. So if you've been to Ketchikan and you've gone to Creek Street and you looked at the red light district, like that's all the booze that came for that was, just off island a little bit, or not off island, but on island, but across a little body of water to get to that. So there's a lot of history. This has certainly been scratched and clawed at for well over 100 years. And before that, obviously the Tlingit and Haida and Shipshan have been around here. So it's pretty cool to be in this area and just to look around and still see it looks. We got cloud cover right now, but you look at the trees, it's like this has probably looked like this very similar for pretty much ever. So as long as you can't see a clear cut, as long as you don't see a shrimp pot or something like that, it's people have been seeing very similar terrain to this for over 100 years and have been tripping and crabbing and logging and building and constructing, and then all that stuff then goes away. So I'm going to do some more exploring around here and see if any of that old logging stuff or old, they didn't have a lot of infrastructure for the oyster farms. It was mostly done on the, you had the pens, and then you had like a barge or something like that people kind of lived on. So looking for some of those old relics that are kind of neat. But yeah, I think it's another thing with where you build, if you get remote, to kind of know what kind of happened there beforehand if you can. So there it is. That's the plan this morning. Got about 10 tongue groove boards to put up. That'll finish that part of the deck. Let's work on the fascia. Head back in, pick up a buddy. He's going to come back out, and we're going to try to really start hammering the plywood and the roof. Everything goes slower than I hope it will. Yeah, I'm going to go in backwards. It's low tide was about an hour and a half ago. It was a -1. So I'm going to head in backwards. I'm going to drop the little buddy anchor. I'm going to offload solo. I'm going to put my waders on, my new Grundens waders, which are awesome. I love them. Put on my waders. I'm going to unload the boat myself using my waders. And then I'm going to get to work. So when I talk about what I'm going to accomplish before I go back into the dock to pick up my buddy around noon, I'm hoping that happens, but there's always like a half hour or so of getting to shore, offloading stuff. All that stuff takes a lot more time than I always anticipate. So I'm hoping to get a good amount of stuff done before I go to pick him up, but I'll probably be spending most of my time getting the wood, the supplies. I got a little platform plank thing that'll fit between ladders, so when we're doing the fascia, we can stand on those things rather than hang off the side of the roof. So logistics, man. Taking everything out here in the boat. Everything has come out in my 21-foot sea runner except for the girders and 6x6 posts for the foundation, as well as the plywood for the foundation. Everything else has come out in this 21-foot sea runner. So all the sides, all the plywood, all the everything has come out here, and it's a lot of runs, a lot of gas, a lot of stress, a lot of fun. So that is one way to kill the time. Do a podcast. Hopefully it recorded well. Hopefully you can hear over the sound of the motor. But thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe, share, all that sort of stuff. I don't try to pitch that too much, but it's important. The likes and whatnot puts it in the algorithm and helps people find it. So appreciate that. Like it and share it and all that. We'll talk to you next time.